Rosie on the house, every Arizona homeowner's best friend.
Well, if you're a regular listener at Rosie on the House, you know we love talking about our infrastructure, and particularly our utilities, our water, our electricity, the generation, the delivery system, and how they all work together. We've covered it fairly extensively, and I feel like I'm always surprised what I don't know, though. I subscribe to everything that press release I can get from APS, SRP, TEP, and this one today we're talking CAP. The Central Arizona Project Canal delivers about a third of the water to Arizona, and we've got Darrin Francom joining us in studio. I was able to get him on the line to talk about just a new interesting fact, this infographic that y'all put out about what it takes to get the water into the CAP canal, because it's all pumped out of the Colorado River. And wow, I would like to know the first person that said, you know what, we're going to pump it up that mountain.
Yeah, Romy, this is really a great day, and we appreciate you having Central Arizona Project on. It really was, a visionary idea of pumping Colorado River from Lake Havasu and bringing it all the way into the central three counties of Maricopa, Pinal, and Pima County. And it's quite an engineering feat.
And this infographic shows just how high you have to pump that water.
So the very first pumping plant, as I said, is at Lake Havasu. And as the infographic shows, is from the river, we initially pump the water just about 810 feet vertical. And it's kind of hard to get your arms or eyes around how big is 810 feet. So the infographic does a wonderful job of placing some other large structures, kind of in the same frame as an 810 foot lift. And so, think of how tall the St. Louis Arch is. It's 630 feet tall. A few hundred feet below that. Hoover Dam would fit underneath it. Statue of Liberty, the White House, State Capitol, really starts to put in the frame of reference as really how large an 810-foot lift is. And
when it gets lifted at the top of that 810 feet, what happens to the water then?
Well, if you're out in that area, you realize it's very desolate. There's not a great place, and so the engineers for the Bureau of Reclamation decided, what we're going to do is we're going to tunnel through the Buckskin Mountain, a 7-mile long tunnel directly through the mountain. So we lift it 810 feet and then go through a large tunnel. The tunnel is 21 feet in diameter, and we tunnel for 7 miles and then come out on the other side of the Buckskin Mountain.
And part of the reason for that initial lift is so that when the water gets to the top of that 810 feet, it can flow downhill for a long way. How long before there's another pumping station to relift the water?
In total, Romy, we have 15 pumping plants. The first pumping plant downstream of the tunnel is called Bouse, and the pumping plant is near the town of Bouse in western Arizona. Off the cuff, I think it's around 35 miles between the tunnel and the next pumping plant. And that's basically what we do across the entire 336-mile-long system, is we let it flow by gravity across the natural desert terrain. And when it hits a low spot, we pump it back up with a pumping plant, put it back in a canal, and let it flow across the desert again.
And one of the other links I got recently from CAP talked about the tunneling system and all the different engineering features that happen along the way. One in particular was as it comes south around a mountain near I-10 before it hits I know it's near the Hacienda, but I don't know if that's the Hacienda pumping plant, but that pumping plant as it crosses the Hacienda.
Yeah, that mountain itself is called the Burnt Mountain Tunnel. And as if you're driving on I-10, let's say heading west toward California, to your right-hand side, you'll see this mountain. And it's rather dark shape, and that's why I'm assuming it came up with the term Burnt Mountain Tunnel. But through there is one of our second tunnels. The I-10 was already there, so the path of least resistance in some way was to move right through that mountain. And I'm just continue to be impressed at the forethought. What a feature to bore through the middle of that tunnel with probably not the same type of equipment and techniques we'd have today.
Because this was started, that would have been in the 70s that this was bored through.
Yeah, original construction for us started in the 70s. I can't give you an exact date on Burnt Mountain Tunnel, but it was probably late 70s or early 80s.
And unlike the Buckskin Mountain, that's a 7-mile long tunnel, this Burnt Mountain Tunnel, it was like a couple football fields, if that.
Yeah, I think the total number for us is somewhere around 700 or 800 feet of tunnel through that one.
So a much smaller tunnel, and you think, man, wouldn't it make more sense? That seems like a lot of work to go around that when you look at it. But like you said, the path of least resistance. And as the canal is coming from the west, pretty much east and south as it's coming and heading down towards Tucson, it has to maintain a slope. And in that article, it talked about it was point like 0.012 foot drop, inch drop per foot or something like that.
Yeah, the way we commonly, so the exact slope is 0.0008 feet per foot. So it's extremely flat. But if you take that across 1 mile of length, it drops about 5 inches for every 1 mile of length it travels. So the slope is set just enough to keep the water moving.
So if a single drop made it all the way from the Mark Wilmer pumping plant to what y'all call terminus, where the canal ends south of Tucson, if I was a single drop of water that made that whole trek, how long does that take?
So a single drop of water would travel 336 miles. The canal velocity varies during our pumping season, but I'd say a good estimate would be between about 3.5 and 4 days to make that full trip.
And in the course of a year, how many drops of water is that? And I know drops would be impossible, but you measure that in acre feet.
Yeah, let's just look at this year itself. So on this year, we're going to divert just a little bit under 900,000 acre feet of water. And the way I like to think of that is 1 acre of land. That would be about 900 feet deep on 1 acre of land is the volume of water that we would pump in 2025.
Wow, that's incredible. And there's so many interesting things about it along the way. The command center where you're monitoring the water flow and you're deciding how much to be pumping out of Mark Wilburn, where the check gates, we haven't even talked about those along the way that control the speed of the water and pumping out, and then how Lake Pleasant is integrated in all of this. And it's such a fascinating, massive project that the more you look at it and see what it really takes to get it, it's very impressive. Water's as cheap as it is in this state.
You hit on something that I marvel on, which is in a couple factors, and it really is just an engineering marvel. It's a treat to have worked on it for so long, and I think our employees take great pride in the mission that we provide to Arizona. Beyond that, it's incredibly complex, and even with that complexity, we still deliver water at great value to Arizona at what I feel is a very reasonable and low-cost price.
And talk to me a little bit about this education center that y'all are working on. That's going to be super cool. I saw the first 50 yards of concrete got poured this week.
Yeah, what a great visionary item by both CAP staff and our board of directors to realize that water is such an important issue and topic for Arizona that it'd be great to have a space where we can educate the public. And so we call it the Water Education Center. It's it's being built on our campus here on 7th Street, just north of the Deer Valley Airport. And our vision for that is to be able to provide this space where we can educate the general public, but maybe from my perspective, one of the important items is to be able to educate our youth who are going to be the future water leaders here in Arizona and get them to understand the complexities of water here in Arizona, the challenges we have, and really establish us as a place where people can come and learn about Arizona water.
And when you do that, at least for me, the more I learn and about it, the more you appreciate it, the more you respect it, the more you conserve it.
It certainly is a finite resource, here. We all live in the desert, and but for that water that we deliver, it probably wouldn't be able to sustain the amount of life and the productivity and the abundance we have here in Arizona. So being educated on it, there's a factor of that which is about conservation and using your water wisely, and what are the things that we could do in the future to continue to have new approaches to Arizona's water situation.
And if you're not familiar with the CAP, but you've been in Arizona, you have seen it if you've driven around anywhere, Maricopa, Tucson, Pinal, Pima, and there's always a different name along it. Like I cross over it 4 times each direction to work, the way the canal and my path go. And like this part is got this person's name on it, this part's got this person's name, and it's all the people that have attributed to the legislation to get it done, the vision to get it done. They've had some major factor in establishing this water source.
Yeah, I think that's a nice tribute we've made to all of those who had, as you described, the vision to bring this project to bear. And so we've named different sections of the canal after all of those who made these strong contributions to what we have today as this marvel and a thing that really facilitates us living in Arizona.
Darrin Francom, thanks for spending a little bit of your Saturday morning here joining us online and sharing with our listeners the CAP marvel.
Well, we really appreciate you. We appreciate your show. I personally enjoy tuning in and listening to you guys. So thanks for having me, and thanks for allowing me to share what I enjoy, which is the Central Arizona Project.
Rosie on the house, every Arizona homeowner's best friend.